This is Heart to Heart with Sibongile Mofokeng on Radio Pulpit. Heart to Heart.
It's good for you as our listener to know about Radio Pulpit's activities. Or do you need advice in an area of your life? Then why don't you log on to www.radiopulpit.co.za. Here you can talk to us, listen to us via live audio streaming, and there is also other reading material for the soul. What are you waiting for? Visit the Radio Pulpit website right now, www.radiopulpit.co.za. Radio Pulpit, your daily companion.
It is your daily companion, 657 a.m. This is where you at. Gave you the sounds of Mabongi Mabaso featuring Kayam Teta and the song We Worship Anthem. I'm just thinking, we are featuring Kayam Teta for the second time. He's been featured in many songs, but such beautiful music. And you can hear his touch there and there. There is this sound that he that says this is something that was cooked together with Kayam Tetra. And at this current moment in time, I'm so delighted my family. At this moment, I'm talking to a social worker, Babalwa Solombela, and Babalwa has experience in counseling, 15 years experience in counseling, and she is a mother as well. She has 3 girls. She is married. She's a mom of 3, and with 11 years experience in employee assistance program in the workplace. Well-being as well. So she is with me right now, and it is so exciting to be talking to her because earlier on we were talking to Mariel from Josie Kids about connecting with one's child. And if we neglect our children, they might find themselves in the position of what we are talking about today with our social worker, Babalwa, and talking about neglect trauma. She's on the line with me. My queen, welcome to Radio Pulpit. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Sibongile. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm good. And I should say, I'm not welcoming you to the listeners. So I forgot to make that clear. I'm welcoming you to a family. So you got family members, no listeners. So if you'd call them listeners, so
Okay.
So welcome to the family.
Thank you for bringing me into the family as well. Thank you so much.
I was just talking to Mariel from Josie Kids about connecting with our little ones, especially during the festive season now, the holiday season where we are relaxed, the importance of that. And I was thinking, this is so much connecting to what Babalwa and I are going to talk about when we're talking neglect trauma. So maybe somebody is asking themselves, neglect what? What is neglect trauma and when does it start?
Yeah, I think it is definitely divine that you had that conversation because that's exactly what it's about. It's about creating connections with our children as parents. And neglect trauma, I think we are so familiar with the social work perspective that's talking about physical needs, you know. You would hear social workers talk about a failure to thrive because a child hasn't received enough attention from their physical needs in terms of their food and their care and shelter and all the safe things that a parent is supposed to provide. But from a neglect trauma perspective today, we're looking at the emotional side of that trauma, where the parent hasn't properly connected with their child, so the child and meeting their child's emotional needs. And this is where that connection becomes so important, even as we go into these holidays. But it's a daily practice to connect with a child. So there are requirements that a parent is supposed to meet in order to make sure that they don't give a child that emotional trauma.
Wow.
So some of those needs are, children need emotionally, like they need autonomy, they need to be independent. You can imagine a 2-year-old, 3-year-old learning to do things for themselves and they want to assert themselves. So at every stage of development, a child needs to to have that autonomy and the and the independence that's required for that particular stage. And then children also need connection, which is, we're talking about it briefly, but not just during holidays. On a daily basis, they need that love and attention and empathy, the ability to express themselves, to build their self-esteem, to tell them they're doing well, to appreciate them, to be consistent. And you can imagine in today's world, which parent is always ready to do this? So we have so much neglect trauma as grown-ups because not every parent is able to do this all the time for their children and provide this type of balance in the home, basically.
Sure. So what are the signs and symptoms of one who has this trauma in their lives? Because I understand it can show up when one is still a child, but it does also shows up when one is an adult. Are they different as well?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because there's a school of thought that says that you always have that inner child inside of you. So as much as we are all grown up now, it does show up. That inner child is still there having needs that are not met. And of course, as an adult, it shows up differently. It's like a type of dysfunction. So sometimes you can wonder, oh, no, I was raised right. My parents loved me. I grew up in a Christian home, but why don't I have confidence? Why don't I have a good self-esteem?
Okay.
Why do I stay in traumatic relationships where my needs are not met? Why do I always want a disproportionate amount of attention? So it shows up in the things in adulthood that didn't happen when a person was a child. So a person might feel insecure in a relationship only to find that the attachment or the connection that they had as a child to their parent wasn't really secure. So now in relationships, even though a relationship is a good thing to be in, a person doesn't feel safe because they've never felt safe in a relationship in terms of their connection with their parent. So even in childhood, it's still important to look at it and say, what does this child need? How does this child receive love? And I'm sure you've heard of Gary Chapman and the love languages. He talks about, the words of affirmation that are so important to a person. And it's so important to even love a child the way that is meaningful to them, in a way that makes them feel the love that they want to feel. So, for instance, my mom used to give us, she was a teacher, so she used to give us dolls on the 20th of each month.
Okay.
So growing up, that was something she would do all the time. Part of buying groceries would include a doll from Checkers or Pick Pay or ShopRite. So her love language was giving us gifts. And that is what we received on a monthly basis, along with KFC. So, but my love language is actually words of affirmation. So what I needed to hear as a child was that I'm doing well, was that I'm successful, I'm a good child, I'm achieving, and all those affirmations that I needed to hear, I did not receive. So my mom was a wonderful mom, and she did all these things to give us love and attention. But because it wasn't in the love language, there's areas in my development that felt like neglect in that area. And then in adulthood, it'll show up as needing affirmation from other people because I didn't receive it in childhood and I didn't give it to myself as a person who would be parenting themselves as an adult.
So now I'm asking myself, okay, so in children, how does it show up again? Yeah?
So in children, they will also feel like an emptiness, like they haven't attached properly, that they haven't been affirmed, like a low self-esteem, or a child can lack confidence or feel like they haven't been given enough attention. And that sense of disconnection is very damaging to a child because it basically separates them from feeling safe and loved in that family. That sense of family is absent because they don't feel loved and appreciated in that in their upbringing.
So does it
And
happen? Yeah. Do we see it showing up with children who are raised by grandparents sometimes and not
Yes,
their,
we do.
yeah?
Definitely. And, there's a guilt that's involved in that because the person will say, my grandparents did everything, but I was never affirmed by my parents, or that gap, that of not being affirmed by your parents is still there, or that gap of never feeling a sense of belonging. Or maybe grandma and grandpa were good at a sense of belonging, but they were not good at boundaries or creating security or playing, which is one of the needs that children have, and that would create that sense of neglect. So it's one of those problems that don't sound serious until you are dealing with the dysfunction of it at an older age. Like when you don't feel like you are confident or having a good self-esteem as a grown-up, and then you realize, oh, but this didn't happen. Looking into neglect trauma from an emotional perspective is not to say we're putting blame on our parents or they weren't perfect in any way. It's to say, what did I need that I did not receive that is now showing up in my grown up life? And it's called a small trauma because you weren't beat up, you weren't raped, it wasn't a car accident, it wasn't a death, so it wasn't in your face type of pain. But this pain is legitimate pain because it's a wound that carries on until a person actually addresses it and say, okay, from this point forward, I actually need to affirm myself. I need to give myself attention. I need to create situations where I feel like I belong, and I need to raise myself, basically filling up that part of me that did not maybe receive empathy, that part of me that did not receive freedom or a proper connection with my parents.
I'm also thinking
or
about,
caregivers.
I'm also thinking about those ones who didn't even get to be touched as children, hugged, those forehead kisses, affirmed.
Oh,
So,
yes.
yeah, the touch is very important as well
Very important.
because it
Very
shows a lot.
important.
Now, there's also another, before we're going to take a break in a short while and then come back. But I want to ask about these. Sometimes we get parents who are raising children in the house, but there's one child. The child might be having your ADHD or some form of sickness that the parents are dealing with, and you find they concentrate more on this one with a challenge more than the others. So would the others who are also now expected to be adults quickly or to grow up quickly because the other one is sick, the other sibling is sick, would they also, do we have those ones who would show up with neglect trauma as well as a
Absolutely.
result?
Those are typical situations where this neglect trauma would actually manifest itself because the parents would have, because of the needs of the child with special needs, they will have a stronger connection, even maybe not even stronger. We all say we love our children the same, but the level of attention that is needed for the child that's with special needs will affect the amount of attention that you give to other children. And
Or vice
you
versa.
vice versa, and even train children to give that attention to the sibling that needs that extra attention. And sometimes to their own detriment because they would like more attention, but clearly there is somebody who needs this attention more in the house, and therefore that attention goes to them. And there will be wounds from that type of upbringing as well. Even if a person understands that, they had a good upbringing, they know how to serve people, they know how to put their needs aside. But when you grow up and you realize that you don't have any boundaries, you are always helping people, you are always putting yourself last. And then you wonder why that is the case. And it's because a boundary was broken there where your needs, you have to give up your needs a lot of the time, most of the time, and learn that is what would be rewarded at home. And that is what would be helpful at home because of the situation that the family was in.
Sure. That really, yeah. I hope I'm not raising some neglect trauma in me as well. but that brings pain towards heart when you realize some of the things that are happening in people's lives. All right, let's take a break. Then when we come back, my queen, where do we begin to start healing? Especially, let's start with the children, because I believe that we can still turn the hands of, okay, we cannot change time, but we can change whatever that's happening around them to minister to our children better. Say we are talking about the one with a sibling who's sick, or the ones that are raised by grandparents. What is it that we can do to help them to better their lives? I'm thinking of a child that you even ask them their name, and the child says, "I'm Sibongile." You're like, huh? I'm Sibongile. They don't feel confident to come out and say, I'm Sibongile. And this other one comes and says, yeah, I'm Sibongile. And they talk loud, and this other one is shying away at the corner there. So how do we fix that? Let's start with the children, and we will get to the adults as well. And I had a question for you that I asked you yesterday. I don't know if we will even get to that one today, but let's start ministering to the children.
Radio Pulpit 657 AM umhlobo wakho wemihla ngemihla.
657 Radio Pulpit News.
You're listening to Radio Pulpit. 30 minutes it is, just after 2. Time for your headlines. And in your headlines, the DA calls for strong parliamentary... Oh. The DA calls for stronger parliamentary oversight and legislative transparency. BOSA challenges government to adopt new ideas at the second national dialogue.
As Bold One is saying, we note with optimism tomorrow's national dialogue that's taking place. And we really hope and trust that tomorrow's engagements will be meaningful and it won't just be another talk shop exercise. South Africa cannot move forward without bold and decisive action.
And in sports, FIFA will vote for the host of the 2030 and 34 World Cups on Wednesday. More at 3 o'clock with Germany Johan else on Something Else.
By Finbond Groep Beperk waarborg ons jou kapitaalbelegging, sowel as rentekoers van 11,25% teen ons eie kredietwaardigheid. Deur jou kuponkoers van 11,25% oor 5 jaar te kapitaliseer, kan jy 'n gemiddelde jaarlikse rentekoers van so hoog as 15% verdien. Finbond Groep Beperk, lae risiko, hoë beloning. SMS RK na 30635. BSNV's geld.
Plug in. Feel the pulse on Heart to Heart with Sibongile Mofokeng on Radio Pulpit. Plug in. Feel the pulse on Heart to Heart with Sibongile Mofokeng on Radio Pulpit. This is Heart to Heart with Sibongile Mofokeng on Radio Pulpit. Heart to Heart.
You're listening to Radio Pulpit, your daily companion. Beautiful music coming there from Bongi and Colin, and the song Be Lifted. Hoping you were dancing. And I'm not alone right here on Heart to Heart. I'm with our social worker talking to Babalwa Solombela. We are talking neglect trauma. And we are here up until 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, we say goodbye to you. Germany Johannes takes you through. And so we got an explanation on the signs and symptoms and where we can see it and with who is prone to have neglect trauma. We spoke about that with Babalwa. But now, Babalwa, how do we get treatment for our children to heal from this kind of trauma when we realize that we have one of us who's very small who is going through emotional neglect as well?
I think it's a big question. It can be on many different levels that you can answer it. I think just on a relational point of view, the connection we are building with our children, let's say over the holiday seasons now, let's take the time to actually find out, what is their love language? What is it that makes them feel most loved and connected to us? And give them our attention when it comes to the words of affirmation I've spoken about, the quality time spent with them, physical touches you have mentioned, the acts of service in terms of doing things for them, covering their books for them, things like that. So those are acts of service, and giving them gifts as well as part of the 5 love languages. That is just a basic way of connecting with the child and understanding what is it that they need. And you will see, like you've mentioned, a child who's not vocal or confident. Yes, it might be a personality type, but if we take deliberate steps and say, you are beautiful, let's hear your voice, let me hear you sing, let me listen to you. A child who's being listened to tends to speak more. They tend to shout more because they are heard more, and they're like so free because the parents can actually hear them and pay attention to them. And they don't feel like they need to disappear into the background where they don't actually matter. They can be loved forward and brought forward with love and attention. And yes, the, children are shy. There are different personality types, but we are tending to what is missing. And as I was preparing for this, like talking to the Lord about it, like why should it matter? Why does it matter that we must be whole in every way? Because we serve a God who does not want us to have anything missing. That's why it matters. It's nothing missing and nothing broken. It's about having that peace, that perfect peace in our lives. And it's God's desire for us to be whole in every way. And yes, there are traumas that are more serious than this, but this is worth it, especially if you have to look now as an adult child, let's say, who grew up with grandma or who grew up in a home with a child with disability as a sibling. That self-awareness is important to say, who am I and how do I feel? Where am I in terms of my own feeling? To identify yourself and your behavior and how you behave. And why do I do the things that I do? And some of the areas are dysfunctional, like you might not have boundaries, healthy boundaries, because now you grew up in an environment where you had to give all the time, even when you didn't want to give. You had to share all the time, even when it was not appropriate to share, because there are times where it's really not appropriate to be sharing because it's actually causing pain more than it is being helpful to that particular person. So it's so important to start the healing with that awareness. And we serve a Lord that enjoys healing broken hearts and binding up the wounds. And the truth of the matter is, if you look at it, there is a wound there. There is something that needs to be worked on. There is a healing balm of Gilead that needs to be put there in that place to say, this was a painful experience. I might have benefited or learned a lot from it, but this is how it hurt. This is how the wound was. And start actually taking a healing journey with the Lord and with yourself to say, but I am good at what I do, and give yourself the words of affirmation. You're almost talking to your childhood self now, but you do matter. Your needs do matter, and this is how you will take care of your own needs. And start those exercises. And it's better to do it through counseling, to get a counselor, a Christian counselor, more especially, so that you can work on these things in the Word and work on these things in yourself. So when we open it up, it's not left there a gaping thing that starts bleeding again. That you are able to pray about it and start receiving healing in those areas. Even though you recognize that there's pain here, you immediately receive healing in those areas. Because the Lord actually wants us to be in perfect peace, to have peace. And He says the peace He gives us is not the same peace that the world gives us. So the healing that we receive from attending to these wounds is not the same as, becoming successful in life and covering up all these wounds with success, or becoming important or being raised insignificant or helping others too much and covering up this emptiness with those things. That's not the Lord's kind of healing. He goes deep into the wounds themselves, and then your success is coming from a healthy place, not a place where you felt like you weren't affirmed enough. And your confidence is coming from a healthy place as well, and you feel a sense of acceptance, first with yourself, before you ask for acceptance from outside of yourself. You feel in control of your own life before you engage in situations where you give control, too much control to other people about your own life. These are all the wounds that get created in adulthood, even in relationships, where you are not attached properly to someone, so you are disconnected to someone you're supposed to be connected to, or you are overly connected to someone because that person is feeding the affirmation and all these things that you didn't receive as a child. So that work we need to do for ourselves, and our partners can help. But I really believe that it's about our relationship with the Lord, and it's about an inner journey that we need to take ourselves.
All right.
In order to start that healing. Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen if this trauma is not addressed into adulthood?
It's got high stakes. The worst that could happen is a person not reaching their full potential. And it might be in the different areas. It might be goals that you have in different areas, and you find like there's this wall that you can't reach a certain level or transcend a certain behavior or healing or restoration in relationships. But it does stop people from being able to fulfill their full destiny. So let's say you don't have the confidence to start a business, and you are gifted in business, but you don't have the confidence to stand on your own and start a business. And you will be limited in that business because you lack the confidence. You don't see your own value. And it can actually literally stop that person's success because they won't go for it. They won't take the leap because there are wounds there that are limiting them from being able to believe that they can actually do something and achieve autonomy, achieve independence, take care of themselves, trust themselves, and all of those things go back to the neglect wounds.
Wow. Sure. So in adulthood, then when you see these signs, start talking to somebody about it. And I'm sure that a person who has gone through this can identify that, no, man, I'm different. I can't reach there. I'm always discouraged. I always think low about myself. I don't see myself making it through. And sometimes you'd find a person even saying, I think we've prayed enough now.
Absolutely. And there is a point where, and I know a lot of us don't want to go back. It's like I'm saying it again, it's not going back.
It's not easy. Going back is not easy as well. I'm just thinking that if you go back, it means you're opening the wound again. So you have to go through the emotions again.
Absolutely. And you have to confront it. The problem with this type of pain is that it stays with you forever. And the worst thing that could happen to a person, an elderly person, is to say, my father never hugged me, and I've carried this wound my whole entire life. I was never told that I was loved. I was never, or I was never disciplined. My goodness, a child that's never disciplined cannot do anything for themselves. They find themselves, they want to study, they cannot study. They want to be successful at work. They were never disciplined. Therefore, they don't have the strength to be a disciplined person. And imagine how limiting that can be if a person was never disciplined. It is really, really causing a lot of harm and causing a person to stumble in areas where they should be successful. So you really need to go back. If you're not, if one of the areas is a lack of discipline, you need to go back and say, what did I get away with when I was a child? The lies, the stealing, all those things that I got away with that have created a situation for me right now where I don't think that I need to be disciplined. All the times that I was confronted and I didn't take responsibility. And I'm sure most of us can remember the turning point in your parents' disciplining where you lied one too many times and now you were going to get punished, and how we change as children because we are confronted with what the wrong that we are doing, and we pay consequences. Imagine growing up where you don't have to pay consequences for the actions that you do, and what kind of grown up you become, and now you want to be disciplined, and you simply can't because it was never given to you, and it's one of the emotional needs. Structure and discipline are one of the emotional needs of children as well. So
But it can be reversed. All of that can be reversed.
It can be reversed. You do have to go in and say, where is the pivotal point? In the earliest memory that I can remember, when did this happen? When did I learn that was not significant, that my sibling was more significant than me? And go back to that particular moment and say, but I am significant. And it takes the Lord, because healing needs to happen here, and it takes a professional, because words need to come. What words did you need to hear at that point? What was so critical? So I'm going to give an example because I feel it in my spirit. Like when I was in school, I did really well at school. And then I would bring back the marks, and my parents and teachers, very strict, they would say, get 8% for a test consistently, and they would say, there is room for improvement. They would not say, well done. You know, and all the discipline. And parents think that they're encouraging you by saying that. But what was missing for me in that moment was that the 80% is good enough. Which means you are good enough. And if you can do better, it will be from the point of being good enough. Not from the point of having not achieved anything. Because that's what happened. The 80% was made into nothing. Now I need to do better from a point of nothing. Not a point of something, of having done well, improve where you can. Do you see the emptiness that brings? So there was nothing for me to hold on to. All I needed to do was to do better. And I kept doing better and better. But it was coming from a place of emptiness, not a place of you are good enough now. And therefore you can do better. So as in my healing journey, I had to go back to that moment and say, but 80% is great. Well done, Babalwa. 80% is wonderful. You have done well. And by affirming myself in that moment, and it's painful, yes, it's painful to go there, but in that moment, what did I need most? I needed to know that 80% was enough.
Yeah.
And therefore, I'm enough. At that moment, that's what I say to myself. I'm enough. 80% is excellent. If you can do better, go for it, but you are good enough. And then instantly, I started to heal from having to perform out of a place of emptiness. Now I can perform from a place of being good enough because that affirmation is there. And it's so important not to wait for somebody external to do it, because you will always look for that affirmation.
And you might not even find it.
And you might not even find it. And it might come with conditions. It might come with abuse.
Yeah.
It might come with conditions that are not acceptable. But you're staying in this relationship because this person is satisfying this part of me that is broken. And every other thing that they do that is not okay is basically is pardoned. Because I'm winning on this small aspect that I did not get because of child neglect in my emotional state. So we do have to raise ourselves emotionally, and that's the biggest point. Is that when you see you have a childhood trauma of neglect and an emotional wound, you do have to go back and raise yourself in that moment and ask the Lord to heal you and go through the scriptures. But you do have to go into that moment and heal that wound.
All righty then. My queen, we got to park it here today, and then we have to continue, hopefully very soon. And I see a family member saying, Shalom, my queen, and to your guest. So most of us have been through these without us knowing. Yeah, that's why you're surprised with some of the of how you've turned out to be, some of the behaviors that we have. But I think we will continue soon with Babalwa. She will be back, and then we can ask questions as well. The lines will be opened. So we were just laying a foundation today, and we will grow and heal from here. So my queen, if we'd like to be in contact with you, how do we do that?
Okay, so I do have a cell phone number. You can give the listeners the family my cell phone number.
You can give it out.
It is 078 56 4584.
078
656 4584. You can just send me a WhatsApp. It's always easier, and then we can get onto WhatsApp calls and have a talk about these issues.
All righty then.
Then I can also direct you to where you can get counseling as well. There's lots of psychologists, social workers that deal with this, even in our churches as well. And then a person can get the attention that they need and heal quickly. Hopefully, the wounds are not too deep, and then they can actually ascend. The point is to ascend and reach the heights that God wants us to reach in our lives.
Wow. Thank you so much, my queen, for ministering unto the family today. May the Lord keep keeping you. We'll be talking to you very soon.
Thank you so much. Blessings to everyone. Thanks for having me.
Have a blessed one.
Thanks, Bonile.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And family, you can reach her on her WhatsApp number 078 656 4584. That's how you can reach our social worker, Osis Babalwa. And may the Lord really heal his people from these kind of wounds that are obstructing us from moving forward. I am signing out. Next up, we say hello to